Hey, so I'm just coming on a little bit early. So if you're watching this, you want to get straight to the content. If you're watching this later, just fast forward about 2 minutes. Yeah, I don't think it's happening anymore, or it might be. Who knows? This little glitch that was happening with, um, like when I was coming on, there was a frozen picture of me. Yeah, see, it just did the thing. It reset. So here we are. I think starting a couple minutes early is great. But yeah, so we're gonna start in about 1 minute. Um, yeah, because I've been starting 2 minutes up. Just because that weird thing where you have this like frozen picture of me from the day before. So it's kind of even weirder than originally thought. That's stuck there for the first minute or so. So it's kind of, I don't know, unsettling maybe. So I'm going to, speaking of settling, I'm just going to settle in a little bit here and we'll get started in a few. I'm just doing a little stretching. Um, so yeah, how how are you doing? I hope we're whenever and wherever you're watching this adjust the microphone a little bit. Are you ready? Maybe I'll put it up like this. Yeah, I need to figure out another arrangement. I don't think you can move that so that it's on the other side, which would actually work a lot better. But here we are. So, good morning and welcome to our Parinama practice space. This is where we together are building a consistent Parinama practice. So, this is Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays right now at 8 a.m. I go live, and then the lives stay up on the channel. So, right now there's probably a little more than 10 of them where we're walking through these concepts kind of sequentially, but not entirely in the order that's found in the book. And we're skipping some of this stuff. If you are following along in the book, um, you will notice that, but you don't need the book to come along for this ride here. So I'm Katie Bickford, and I'm the author, co-founder, co-creator of Parinama Method. And just a little bit about me. I used to be an executive. I have also lived and traveled all over the world and done all sorts of sort of weird esoteric studies like meditation, yoga, kriya, pranayama, whatever. I need to come up with a way. Oh, Thai massage. Yeah, right. So anyway, so our topic for today is going to be. So this week, the theme was discussing hubs and ultimately what they are. And so next week's themes are going to be about the interruptions and stressors. And as you'll see, they're the way we frame them is we talk about human rights and um, like sort of our inalienable human rights and also how those get interfered with. And then also we talk about boundaries in the context of forming them hub by hub. Now, you might notice that even in these sessions this week, we don't go too deep into the hubs. We maybe sort of graze up against them and sort of use them as examples. But ultimately what we'll do is we learn more about the hubs. If in and you'll be the judge of whether I've done a good enough job at this or not. But I'm just trying to give a sort of a higher level notion about what they are. And then through the practice, we come to use them as an organizing principle as we do this exploration that we are on together. So, all right, let's get started. Let's just start by taking a breath here in through the nose. Hold a little bit here, just to expand, create some expansion, and then exhale through the mouth, like blowing out the candle. That felt kind of nice. So do another one if it feels right. And also just checking in. So we'll talk about the nervous system today. So today we're going to do a little bit of talking about the hubs and even to an extent of how they fit in with Parinama method. We're going to talk on top of that, we're going to talk about how where accountability and responsibility plays into this notion. So we've built up to there's nothing wrong with you, and we're understanding how our nervous system is built. And now we're going to discuss how we are responsible and accountable for our behavior, regardless of the patterns that we have. But if we reduce shame, we can have kind of a cleaner relationship with how to make right and resolve and even do the developmental work to expand the capacity without feeling defensive about where we currently are. So, okay. So for today, so let's just do this check-in, this nervous system check-in, where we're checking in on our mental, emotional, and physical state. And by doing this check-in, we're differentiating them and we're just directing our attention to the various facets of what it feels like to be you right now. So physically, on a scale of 1 to 10, give yourself a rating. I wish we were sitting talking because I'd love to talk this out with you. Because just a note, this is something you can do with kids. You can do this with friends. I find, I have people that we kind of like start a day like this, just to kind of connect and just sort of check in and be aware of how we're doing, and how deep we get into any of the numbers is sort of up for, is up for, whatever, however we're feeling. So physically, right now I feel pretty good. So I'm going to give myself a strong 8. Emotionally, so I'm probably gonna give myself a 6 or a 7. Um, so I had something kinda, like, throw me off. I had somebody kind of assume negative, intent with me, somebody that I really trust, like, in the evening last night, so that kind of has me a little bit perplexed, but I feel yeah, so I'm gonna give myself a lower grade on emotion because it's sort of like spent some of my capacity in on my emotional. And then cognitively, I feel really strong. I'm give myself an 8, 9. I feel ready, and hopefully this session is going to demonstrate that. We'll see how well I do. You can be the judge. I think for if you're up for it, I think in the comments, give me a rating on a scale of 1 to 10 of how well you think I did cognitively on this exercise. So let's just, I'm going to do a little bit of a refresher for what from yesterday. And for those who missed it, have no worries. We're going to catch y'all right up. And at the end of this, we're going to do an exercise. So, first of all, starting out with this is sort of the overarching notion of Parinama method. And we're talking about the hubs, which is starting by saying that 95% of our day is spent operating out of our subconscious and unconscious. So 95% of our day is operating out of patterning. So it's, like getting up, whatever your routine is, you go to work and you kind of don't have to like super turn your brain on. Occasionally you have to make a new decision. So you kind of like light up and make a call. But this is the difference between just kind of like, you're sort of straightening things up versus saying, kind of like left hand Alf doll, move to my right. I guess your left. So cameo from our favorite little buddy, where we're actually actively thinking. And the reason that we operate out of reflex and subconscious is, and reflex is unconscious, is what is so if in the shorthand, is because it's incredibly energetically demanding to use cognitive thought and processing. We use like 10 to 15% of our energy budget for new cognition. If you're learning new things, you're burning more calories. Our body is designed to be optimized for survival. So conservation is part of that. And so It's why I mean, think about it, if you go to a new place, if you start something new, that it's tiring. It's like and people call it mentally tiring, right? Physically is it's physically exhausting, mentally exhausting. Mentally exhausting is an exhaustion. So the next extension to this is like, okay, well, where was that 95% that I'm operating? Like, what is that? Like, where was the blueprint for that formed? If I'm operating out of sort of preformed reactions, so where do those come from? Where were they formed? And so with Parinama method, we talk about how those were formed. And very specifically, we look at the fact that, first of all, they were formed without context. So you didn't get to really make decisions about what would be better. It's just with whatever faculties you had at the time that that aspect of your nervous system was forming were applied to making the best of your situation. Now, add to that there is a whole suite of these reflexes that have to do with survival, emotional literacy and capacity, or like sense of physical security and trust, emotional literacy and capacity, and even sense of autonomy and confidence, personal power and individuality, the first, second, and third hubs, that those are formed before we have episodic memory, which means that we're coding memories in a way that we can kind of make sense of how things happened. We might have little sparks of strong emotional kind of moments, but not like, oh, this is what happened and that happened and this. And if we do have them, they tend to be sort of constructed from later in life, sort of notions and stories people have told us. And then as we get into the fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh hub, there is a bit more memory capacity. We can remember more of what happened when they were formed. But also you have to realize like the making choices in the formation of that is still not possible because you don't have context. So realize that when you make a choice, it has to do with understanding like cognitively and rationally what options are available. And this is still arising from from being like whatever capacity you have given the environment that you're operating in and responding to that in the way that makes the best of it for your for your disposition. So here we'll look at this. This is kind of the, I guess, like the non-Parinama branded explanation. So hub one being infant, in red, two baby, three toddler. And even when you look at this, maybe you're connecting to the idea of like what the energy is of that stage. So like an infant is just literally a little blob. If you've ever had a newborn in your life, you see that it's like it's just this kind of little blob that needs to be like swaddled and changed and fed and responded to, but there's not a lot of like it's just this it's just it's like it's a spirit in the emerging physical entity. And then the baby starts to interact with the people closest, specifically primary caregivers. So it's like so you're finding like it starts to attune with caregivers by learning that it's like, oh, when I'm upset they try to help me. And so you're learning that you're actually learning that the emotions that arise inside of you are synchronized with the world at large. So this develops trust and understanding of what your emotions are, and also depending on how we were raised, to what extent the capacity, so the tolerance the environment has, the folks in our life, our family, and specifically our parents have for our emotions. And then toddler, the terrible twos, the toddler is like really defiant and asserting themselves as an individual, and like now not as like cuddly. They're actually trying to like, I can do it, mine. And usually it's kind of considered to be like, oh, like not as sweet. And then but it's a very important part, and it's very challenging for a parent to raise a very strong-willed child, but breaking that will with shame and discipline is one of the things that can be carried for, a lifetime if we waited. And then we look at early childhood. So this is where you kind of you're starting to go to kindergarten, preschool, where you're starting to form relationships out. Those relationships reflect back into your sense of who you are, and we'll get more into that in coming chapters. Then, as in late child, starting to become more articulate, using our words, using listening, and so we'll talk a bit about things, I think, with looking at the that that are conserved in us from those early years is that our relationship with others in the fourth hub, it arises from our relationship with ourselves, because at that age the way people treat us makes us feel like they're telling us who we are. So, the way that gets conserved is that we go into relationships with preconceived notions about what people's motivations are. So when we're talking about the tangle, which if we may not have time today, we get into, it's that it's like, I know what motivates people, so this is what I suspect and this is what I play to. Another thing that's important, and we certainly get into as we keep going, is in the development in late childhood, of expression, keeping in mind once again this notion of no context is that a young kid has no, like, the social mores and the correct things to notice and point out are also, there's no context. So the thing with speaking freely and feeling confident in what you say, a really young nervous system could point out that, say, someone's fat or someone's behavior is strange, and nobody else, is like not being addressed, either in the family or in the community, and they can be like shushed or shamed or embarrassed for speaking out. And that you think about the shock that that puts on a nervous system of not knowing what you did wrong. And, in certain cases, that this can be more intense than others. But learning how to speak out and actually speak up and notice things and point things out and articulate them, that if we're having experiences where that is actually met with disdain, part of like the anxiety, the underlying anxiety around like public speaking, or even speaking up, that can be formed at that stage. And so the one last hub that we'll look at in the context of what we're talking about today is we'll talk about adolescence, which is really about where you start to have your own perception, your unique perception, your vision. You start to have, like really um, larger ideas, and this is where focus, anything that's to do with vision, seeing, making decisions, comes into formation. And then early adulthood, which is really understanding and wisdom and intellect, is really the prefrontal cortex, which is, it's kind of, its roadmap is that it sort of develops into about, 25 years old. And that's, corresponds with when you can rent a car on your own, because it is the emotional limbic system of your brain has an appropriate amount of cover with critical thinking and cognition, that that you're less likely to be making bad sporadic decisions. So let's talk about it. So when we're talking about this, so going back to like 95% of our life is operating out of reflexes. We have these patterns that, we get maybe perplexed by. because we may be like, "I don't wanna think that," but it's so deep that it comes up and it just keeps happening, and that can lead to, self-loathing or low confidence or just negative thoughts about yourself in all sorts of ways. So, we're looking at this like, okay, this is a patterning that was adopted to an environment that actually, very likely doesn't exist, and if it does exist, we're actually looking for environments that match up with our worldview, and that's the whole thing. But we're talking about like, so this is all about how was your nervous system programmed, and what is your nervous system? So, your nervous system is your brain, your spinal cord, and the nerves that extend out into your body that innervate your muscles and your reflexes. So they move your body. They create the neuropeptides that cascade into your physical body. You actually have receptors that have to do with feeling that are throughout your physical body as well. And that is in chapter 1 if you want to read the molecules of emotion, from, Dr. Candace Pert wrote the book. There's a section on it in chapter 1. So there's, and this is coming from this like quasi central, this notion that it's a central command system in the brain, but it's actually the inputs from your environment and your reactions are kind of more of like a loop in a sense, but we won't talk more about that today. But so this is why when we talk about uniting reflex, emotion, and cognition, we're talking about all of these stages of the nervous system and how we can actually affect the changing and softening and reducing the patterning that is maladaptive, by uniting all facets of it, realizing that cognition alone just can't get the job done. It's the tip of the iceberg. And if we try to cognitively change things, our reflexes that are tuned to our survival will keep being that wonky wheel on the shopping cart that is like so-called self-sabotage that pulls us in a direction that makes us think that we're, maybe kind of a turd. So let's see, where are we gonna go with this? I'm looking at some notes here. I feel like that covered it. I think we got the job done on that for today. Um, I didn't cover the tangle, which is sort of the ultimate patterning mechanism, which is that our early events and circumstances, create these reflexes. We we rationalize these reflexes with belief systems, and that forms what we think is. And that reality we either project into the world or actually actively look for environments where it syncs up and makes sense. So we seek, this tightens this tangle. So it continues this validation that's like, yeah, see the way that I believe in the, my responses and my beliefs around them, my sense of reality is like a whereas what we're talking about, in fact, malleable. It's not that everything will change, but everything will change if you practice this. And this is why we have the space, is that what it does require is devotion to yourself, that you're showing up for yourself on a consistent basis. It doesn't have to be every day, but a consistent basis to show yourself love and show yourself that, no matter that you're going to give yourself what you have available. Sometimes it's not a lot, but just the signaling of that. So as a final note on the talky part of this is accountability and responsibility. So, you see, like, one of the things that, is not, at least I see, is that people say, well, the reason I'm like this is because, my father did this or this happened. And so mistreatment of other people and the outputs of our patterning that make people feel bad or mistreat people or take advantage of them or drain people's energy. Somebody says, please don't do that. You do it anyway. And you're like, I can't help it. It's just how I am. We are ultimately responsible for whatever the state is of your nervous system. That's yours now. Like as adults, there is sort of a passing of the torch where, yes, we can reach back and hold the people accountable who patterned us, but there's very little that they can do other than giving us some validation and comfort and support if they say, I'm sorry that I did that, and explain what was going on, because ultimately what we're left with, that doesn't solve the patterning issue, because that stuff is just coded in. So we have to do the work to resolve it. And part of what we're doing with this is we're reducing or eliminating shame, so that being a reparative person, being able to apologize, make right of things, even that our own behavior, it reaches like higher levels of maturation and capacity, that we're taking responsibility for our behavior in the world. So this isn't a free pass. This isn't like there's nothing wrong with me, so I can kind of walk around, mistreat people. You're going to be accountable, as you are right now, but accountable in a way where it is not painful to take responsibility, because it represents feeling like there's something wrong, or there's something in, shame bound with this. So, all right. So, just a reminder before we get into the exercise for tomorrow. So if you were reading, I would say if you're reading along here, the pages are, so you've got the neuropeptides, molecules of emotion, on page 10. This is still chapter 1. The hubs section is you've 10, 11, 12, and 13. It's a little bit boring. It's explaining the hubs in a very academic way. It's, if you're interested, it's good, not necessary. It's like from a textbook style view of this, not necessary for the practice that we're doing, but it can be good supplement if you're really loving the ride and just want more. So next week we're going to it's going to be interruptions and stressors week. So the ways that we look at parinamas, we take the hubs and we learn what they are individually, and we go, step by step or hub by hub. We learn what they are and what they contain. We understand the interruptions and stressors on a nervous system at the particular stage of development, and how they can impact the ultimate patterning. And then we come to understand and know. So then we come to know the adaptation patterns. More coming on that. And then we work on the techniques and exercises to really expand capacity and make the hub more dynamic, so that it can actually start to respond in a way that is, but I guess appropriate's not like my favorite word for this, but where instead of having fixed responses to stimulations, that we can actually be more sort of, adaptive. Okay, so next week we are going to talk about human rights and boundaries, and very specifically in Parinama method in terms of the development of the hub and the interruptions and stressors, is that the impacting factors, we look at the human rights, the things that each hub really is a birthright, and that they either are diminished or not given or even taken away. And so we look at that to understand where we might have some strongly held beliefs and emotions about the given hub, and understand where traumas in its development can occur. And then we look at boundaries, where the formation of the boundaries, whether they were formed or not, we look at that as another way that that a hub can become adapted. So let's do the tune in together really quickly. I'm going to read, follow along with one hand and read with like my eyes in the other hand. Hold the book. So just following along. So we're going to start. So this is the first hub when we're looking at, establishing the connection in both feet with the ground. So just notice where the soles of your feet are existing right now, and possibly move them so they're flush with the ground. If you're sitting, notice where your bum is, slightly bend your knees if you are standing. And now squeeze your glutes to a tremor. So find that and then slowly release that. Now make a gentle hula hoop movement with your hips, twice to the right and then twice to the left. So we're just bringing our consciousness into the various hubs of our body and noticing how the stability of the first hub now supports the ability to sort of have this kind of, it's like, it's sensational, it's nice, it moves the rest of the body in the second hub. Now push feet into the ground and extend posture upwards with your eyes facing directly forward. This is the pushing down to rise up. On the inhale, expand your torso simultaneously in all directions. This is intended to bring breath into your back, followed by a single sharp exhale through the nose. Use the diaphragm if you can. So take a natural slow inhale with your hands to your sides. And exhale, arms out. Now inhale your hands to your heart. And just hold your hands on your heart for one breath and connect to yourself. And with a single gentle neck roll, go clockwise once, nothing too strenuous, just bringing some movement into the neck, and then go counterclockwise to the left. Now, inhale your chin to the sky. Optional, unlock your jaw and open your mouth wide, sticking out your tongue. And now exhale your chin down to your chest, giving the back of your neck a nice stretch there. Quick tug on your earlobes and massage your ears. Say to yourself, even as challenges come my way, I love and accept myself. Even as challenges come my way, I love and accept myself. Place the heels of your hands on your eyes and now inhale. It feels like even give yourself a little gua sha. If you're feeling bumpy, and visualize the day ahead. So imagine how you want to feel and one specific thing you want to happen, and take a couple of breaths if necessary to see and feel this. So instead of just jumping in and autopilot, put some intention into ideally how it would feel today, and knowing the things ahead on your calendar or what you expect, like what's the one positive outcome that you'd like to really tune into. And on the exhale, remove your palms and widen your eyes and take in as much as possible. Now, with your nose facing forward, lift your eyes to the sky. You can feel a little bit of a stretch there. Then lower your eyes and look forward. Comb your fingers in your scalp. Give your hair a slight tug upwards. Now shake your hands, do a little body wiggle and stomp your feet on the ground and just tune into the sensations in your body. So that is it for today. Thank you for coming along. I'm looking forward to seeing you next week. Any comments, if you don't want to put anything in public comments on YouTube, at the Parinama Method on Instagram, please reach out. Any engagement, please feel free to just let me know if there's stuff you want covered, things that you're hoping would help you make your practice more accessible and work better for you. I'm at your service. But until next week, it is already Thursday. I cannot believe it. Or whatever day it is that you're watching this, because I'm actually talking to myself right now. But if I'll see you next Tuesday. But yeah, and I'm looking forward to it, where we're going to start to talk about the human rights, which is going to be a lot of fun. So if you notice, if they're already scheduled in the live manager, and also there's about 10 or so of these Parinama practice spaces already loaded up under lives in the YouTube. And if you look in the history, there's about like 300 plus readings where I'm doing the book cover to cover, and it's listed by page. So if you're on a page in the book and you kind of want to sort of have some exposition on it, go for it. It's in there for you. So anyhow, thank you again. It's been a great week with you, and I appreciate you so much. And I'll see you on the other side. Bye.